You know, I've always believed there are two kinds of people in this world. People who need hotels, and people who need trees. I've always been the latter. I'm Ben, and for as long as I can remember, camping hasn't just been a hobby. It's been how I reset my brain. The smell of pine needles, the sound of a fire snapping, the total silence. That's my church. My girlfriend Sarah was not one of those people. When we met, she was strictly a boutique hotel room service kind of woman, which was fine. We were great together. She was funny, sharp, and had this laugh that, well, it just got to me. We'd been dating for about 6 months, and things were getting serious. But I had this need to show her my world. I wanted her to see what I see, to feel that peace. So I planned the perfect trip. Not some crowded KO a campground with screaming kids and RV hookups. I mean real camping. I had a spot I'd been going to for years in the backcountry of a massive national forest. You had to drive about 40 miles on a paved road, then turn onto a gravel fire service road for another 10. And then you hit the old logging track. It was basically 2 ruts in the dirt that wound up a mountain for another 5 miles. You needed a truck, which I had, and you needed patience. But at the end of it, perfection. A small clearing, totally isolated, with a view that looked out over a whole valley. You couldn't see another human being for miles. Sarah was a trooper. I'll give her that. She was nervous, but she was trying. So, Ben, she said, her voice tight, gripping the oh-crap handle in my truck as we bounced over a rock. You said this was off the beaten path. This path looks like it was beaten to death. I just laughed. I told you, it's worth it. Trust me. No spreadsheets, no email notifications. Just you, me, and about 1 million stars. She smiled, but it was thin. And bears. You mentioned bears, right? They're more scared of us than we are of them, I said, probably for the 10th time. It was about 2 miles up this final logging track that we saw the first one. It was a rock about the size of a microwave, sitting on the side of the track. Painted on it in crude, sloppy white paint was the number 1. Huh, I said. What's that? Sarah asked. No idea. Maybe kids? Or maybe off-roaders marking their trail. Don't worry about it. We kept driving. The track was getting rough, and I was focused on not bottoming out. A few minutes later, Sarah pointed. There's another one. I glanced over. This one was on a big ponderosa pine, just a white circle with the number 4 in the middle. That's weird, I said. They're not miles. We've barely gone half a mile. Maybe it's like a scavenger hunt? She offered. Yeah, probably. A scavenger hunt for mud. I put it out of my mind. I was too excited to get to the spot. We saw 2 more. A 7, painted on a fallen log, and a 13 on a rusted, half-buried piece of old machinery. The 13 gave me a little jolt. It was just messy. The paint was dripping, like whoever did it was in a hurry. We finally pulled into the clearing, and just like I remembered, the sun was filtering through the tall pines. The air was crisp, and the view just opened up in front of us. Sarah actually gasped. Okay, she said, getting out of the truck. Okay, I get it now. This is... Wow. I felt that swell of pride. See? I'm not crazy. We spent the next 2 hours setting up. I'm one of those guys who has all the gear. I got the big 6-person tent set up our palace, I called it. Got the camp kitchen organized, the chairs unfolded, the firewood stacked. Sarah was a huge help. She was getting into it, her nervousness fading, replaced by this childlike curiosity. As the sun started to dip, Painting the whole valley in orange and purple, I got a fire going. I was cooking steaks over the open grate, drinking a cold beer. Sarah was sitting in her camp chair, wrapped in a blanket, just staring at the view. "You were right," she said softly. "It's like the whole world just stopped." "Told you," I said, grinning. "It was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted. We ate, we talked. We talked about things we hadn't before. Hope's old family stories. It was one of the best nights of our relationship." Around 10, Sarah decided she needed to use the facilities, which, out here, meant walking into the woods with a roll of toilet paper and a small shovel. The camper's dreaded walk, I call it. "Do I need, like, a flare gun?" She joked, but I could hear the nerves back in her voice. "You'll be fine," I laughed. "Just go about 50 yards behind that big clump of ferns. Don't go too far. I'll keep the headlamp pointed in your direction so you can find your way back. Okay? Don't let a bear get me. Deal." She clicked on her little headlamp and vanished into the trees. I stood by the fire, poking it with a stick, feeling completely, utterly content. I waited, poked the fire, waited. I looked at my watch. She'd been gone. Maybe 5 minutes? It felt longer. The silence out here is thick. You can hear everything, every tiny snap of a twig. "Sarah?" I called out. "You good?" Silence. My heart gave a little thump. "Sarah?" I called louder this time. "Ben." Her voice came back, but it was wrong. It was a high, tight whisper. "Ben, get over here, now." A spike of adrenaline shot through me. I grabbed my maglite from the truck, the big 4-cell one you can use as a club, and crashed into the woods, following the tiny beam of her headlamp. "What is it? Are you hurt? Was it an animal?" I found her standing frozen, her back to me, staring at a tree. She was pointing, her hand shaking. "Sarah, what's wrong?" She just whispered, "Look." I shined my maglite where she was pointing, and my blood just evaporated. There, on the trunk of a pine tree, not 40 yards from our tent, was another one of those crude, white-painted signs. It wasn't a 13. It wasn't a 7. It was a 14. We just stood there, staring at it. My brain was trying frantically to make it make sense. It's just another marker, Sarah. It's okay. It's a trail. We must have camped right next to a hiking trail." She turned to me, her face pale in the beam of my light. "A hiking trail?" "Ben, there's no trail. Look." She was right. It was just dense underbrush. And the number. It was painted on the side of the tree facing our tent, like it was meant to be seen from our campsite. But the last one we saw was 13, I said, my voice sounding weak. "That was miles back. On the road. How?" "Ben," she whispered, and her voice was trembling so hard she could barely speak. "Someone was here while we were setting up, while we were sitting by the fire. Someone was right here, and they painted that." The silence of the woods was no longer peaceful. It was heavy. It was watching us. I grabbed her hand. "Okay, let's go back to the fire. We're fine. We're in the light. I'm here. Nothing's going to happen." We walked back, practically jogging, our heads on a swivel. The clearing, which had felt like a sanctuary just 10 minutes ago, now felt like a stage. A brightly lit stage in a pitch-black, silent auditorium. "It's just kids, Ben," Sarah said, trying to convince herself. "Right? Local kids, trying to scare the campers." "Yeah," I said, my voice hollow. "Yeah, just kids." But I knew. You don't drive 5 miles up a nearly impassable logging road in the middle of the night just to paint a 14 on a tree to scare one couple. The effort, it was too much. This was deliberate. We didn't talk. We just sat by the fire, straining our ears. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves. Was it a deer? Or was it him? The person with the white paint. We should leave, Sarah said, her voice small. We can't, I whispered, and I hated myself for it. I've had 3 beers, Sarah. I can't drive that road in the dark. It's not safe. We'll get stuck. We have to wait until morning. She just nodded, pulling the blanket up to her chin. We didn't sleep. Not really. We got into the tent and zipped it up tight, but we just lay there in our sleeping bags for hours listening. My mag light was in my hand, my thumb on the switch. Just before dawn, I must have drifted off because I was jolted awake by Sarah's hand on my arm. I heard it again, she whispered. Heard what? A snap. A branch. It was close. On the other side of the tent. I held my breath. And then I heard it too. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Someone was walking. Slow, deliberate. Just outside in the trees, circling our clearing. I've never felt terror like that. It's not like a movie. It's a cold, paralyzing weight that fills your whole body. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just lay there, clutching the flashlight, listening to the footsteps. They paused, then continued. Crunch, crunch. And then they just faded away. We waited until the sun was fully up. Until the clearing was flooded with bright, hot morning light. Only then did I unzip the tent. I stepped out, my heart hammering. Everything looked normal. The fire was just embers. The chairs were still there. The truck was fine. See? I said, trying to sound brave. Nothing. Probably just a deer. A big, clumsy deer. Sarah didn't look convinced. Ben, let's just pack. Please, let's go. Okay, I said. Okay, you start on the inside of the tent. I'll go get the cooler from the truck, and I need to get more firewood. Firewood? We're leaving. No, I mean, I'm just gonna look around, just to be sure. It was a lie. I wasn't going to get firewood. I was going to where I heard the footsteps. I don't know why. I had to know. I walked to the other side of the clearing, the side we hadn't explored. I pushed my way through the bushes, scanning the ground, the trees. And I found it. It was another marker, painted on a flat-faced boulder, not 20 yards from our tent. It was fresh. The white paint was still tacky. Mile 15. My stomach turned to ice. He was here, while we were hiding in the tent. He was that close. And he left this. For us, Ben. Sarah screamed my name. It was a real scream, a shriek of pure panic. I sprinted back to the clearing, bursting through the trees, my hand on the hatchet on my belt. What? What is it? She was standing by a patch of ferns, near where we'd packed the truck. She was pointing at the ground. I was packing the dry food bag, and I dropped an apple, she stammered. It rolled. It rolled over there, and I went to get it, and I saw that. I looked where she was pointing. It was a patch of ground, about 6 feet long, 4 feet wide. It was wrong. The dirt was darker. It was loose. It had been disturbed. It was a shallow grave. No, I said. No, it's nothing. An animal dug it up. A stump hole. But I was already walking towards it. and I could see, sticking out of the loose soil, a small blue corner, a piece of plastic. "Ben, don't," Sarah whimpered. "Please, let's just go." I couldn't. I was in a trance. I got on my knees and I used my hands, scraping away the dirt. It was a cooler, a small blue igloo cooler buried about a foot down. I pulled it out. It was heavy. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely work the latch. I opened it. It wasn't food. It was a camera bag, a black nylon-padded camera bag. I unzipped it. Inside, there was a digital camera, an old silver Canon PowerShot. I turned it on. My heart was a drum against my ribs. The screen flickered to life. The battery was flashing red, almost dead. But it worked. There were pictures. I clicked the little review button. The first picture was of a man and a woman. They were smiling, arms around each other. They were camping. They were in this exact spot. I could see the same oddly shaped boulder in the background. I clicked to the next picture. It was a picture of a marker. Mile 8, next picture. It was their tent, taken from a distance. From the woods. Next picture. The man. He wasn't smiling. He was looking over his shoulder, his face tight with fear. Next picture. The woman, crying, huddled inside their tent, peeking out. My thumb was shaking. I clicked again. The next picture was blurry. It was dark. It was the inside of the tent. It looked like the man was struggling with someone. Click. A close-up. The woman's face. Her eyes wide with a terror I can't even describe. Her mouth open in a scream. Click. The screen went black. The battery was dead. I dropped the camera. My mind was reeling. The markers. They weren't a trail. They were a log. A countdown. A hunting journal, Ben? Sarah's voice was a pinprick. And that's when I heard it. From the woods, from the direction of the mile 15 marker. A whistle. A low, simple two-note tune. We who? He was here. He'd been watching us. He'd let us find it. Run, I hissed. Run, to the truck, now. We didn't pack. We didn't grab anything. We just sprinted. I fumbled for my keys, jammed it into the ignition. The engine roared to life. I threw the truck into reverse, not even looking, and slammed hard into a pine tree. The truck stalled. No, 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 no. I screamed, turning the key. The engine just clicked. We who? The whistle was closer. Come on, baby, start. I turned the key again. Click, again, click. Ben. Sarah shrieked. I looked up, and he was there, standing at the edge of the clearing, right by the mile 15 marker. He was tall, thin, dressed in, I don't know, old, stained camo. He was holding a rifle, just resting it on his shoulder. And he was smiling. He wasn't even looking at us. He was looking at the grave, at the cooler. He looked annoyed, like we'd messed up his game. We'd broken the rules. I turned the key one more time. The engine caught. It roared. I didn't even put it in drive. I just stomped on the gas in reverse, tore a new gash in my bumper, then slammed it into drive and floored it. The truck fishtailed, spraying dirt and rocks everywhere. I glanced in the rearview mirror as we rocketed onto the logging track. He was just standing there. He wasn't running. He wasn't even aiming the rifle. He just watched us go. And he slowly, deliberately raised one hand and waved goodbye. We drove. I've never driven like that. We hit rocks that should have broken an axle. I took turns that should have flipped us. Sarah just sat in the passenger seat, silent, her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. We didn't stop. We didn't slow down. Not when we hit the gravel road. Not when we hit the pavement. We drove for an hour until we hit the first town with the state police barracks. We burst in, looking like maniacs, babbling about graves and markers, and a man with a rifle. They believed us. I think they'd heard rumors. They sent a tactical team up there. They found the campsite. They found the grave. They found the cooler. But the camera, I'd dropped it. It was gone. They found the markers too. 14 and 15, but 13, 7, 4, and 1. They were gone. Painted over. Covered with moss and dirt. Like the trail had been erased. And the man, he was gone. Vanished like a ghost. They found out who the couple in the pictures were. They'd been reported missing 8 months earlier. Their car was found at the trailhead, 10 miles away. The police thought they'd just gotten lost. We've moved since then. We live in the city. A high-rise, actually. 20 floors up, Sarah. She doesn't like the woods anymore. She doesn't even like parks. I still have the truck, but I don't go camping. I sold all my gear. Every tent, every sleeping bag. But the real reason I'm telling you this is because of what the police told me right before we moved. They went back up to that clearing one last time to do a final sweep. They found something new, nailed to a tree, right where my truck had been parked, right where we had slammed it into drive and fled for our lives, was a new sign, not painted. This one was carved into a fresh piece of wood. Mile 16. There's a certain kind of freedom you only feel once in your life, and it's usually in college. It's that feeling of invincibility. It's that perfect sweet spot after you're free from your parents, but before you're crushed by a mortgage. That's where we were. Me, I'm Alex, my best friend Mark, and our 2 other buddies, Chris and Tom. We were sophomores. We had just survived a brutal round of midterms, and we had a 3-day weekend. We weren't going to waste it studying. Mark was the ringleader. He was always the ringleader. Loud, funny, one of those guys who just crackled with energy. He's the one who had the idea. "Boys," he announced, kicking open our dorm room door. "We are getting out of this concrete jungle. We are going to commune with nature. We are going to Redwood Creek State Park." We were in. Redwood Creek was. It was the spot. Not some backwoods hellhole. It was a proper, funded, capital P park. Ranger stations, paved roads, numbered campsites, bathroom blocks with running water. It was the kind of place your parents would take you. It was safe. And more importantly, it was notorious for being a party campground. We loaded up my '98 Jeep Cherokee with 2 tents, way too much cheap beer, and a box of instant noodles. We got there on a Friday afternoon. The sun was shining. It was perfect. We pulled up to the main entrance, a big, impressive log cabin-style ranger station. We all piled out, stretching. I was the responsible one, so I had the reservation printout. I walked inside. The guy at the counter looked up and gave us this huge, toothy grin. "Well, hello there, fellas." He boomed. He was maybe in his late 30s, early 40s. Kinda lanky, with a real high and tight haircut. He was wearing the full Ranger uniform khaki shirt, green pants, the patch on the shoulder. "Here to check in?" "Yeah," I said, sliding the paper over. "Alex, for campsite 32B. 32B. Ah, you got a good one, he said, tapping on his computer. He was really friendly. Almost too friendly. That's my favorite loop. Right down by the creek. Nice and private. He looked up from the screen, and his eyes scanned all four of us. Mark, of course, was goofing off, shadowboxing with Tom. Just you four, then? The ranger asked, his smile not wavering. Yeah, just us, I said. Good, good. And you're here for, let's see, checking out Sunday morning? That's the plan. Fantastic. He leaned in a little, lowering his voice like he was telling us a secret. You boys look like you're here to have a good time, am I right? A little fun? I glanced back at Mark, who had an armload of chips from the little gift shop corner. Yeah, I guess. Just, blow off some steam. I hear that, the ranger said, winking. He stamped our pass. I hear that loud and clear. Now, I'm Ranger Phil. I'm the head guy on this loop tonight, so if you need anything, and I mean anything, you just let me know. We like to let our guests have a good time, as long as things don't get too out of hand, Sure, thanks. He handed me the pass, but as I took it, I noticed something. His namatag. It wasn't the official, engraved plastic kind. It was a piece of masking tape stuck to his shirt with PHIL written on it in Sharpie. I must have paused for a second because he followed my gaze. Ah, this old thing, he chuckled, tapping the tape. Busted my real one last week, wrestling a raccoon out of a dumpster. Thing was the size of a Buick. Haven't gotten my replacement yet. Oh, right. Rough, I said. You have no idea. He gave us that giant grin again. Now you boys have fun. And you, he said, pointing, not at me, but right at Mark. You look like the leader of this outfit. You keep these other rascals in line, you hear. Mark laughed. Aye, Captain. We piled back into the Jeep, hyped. Dude, that ranger is awesome, Chris said. He basically just told us we can party. I didn't say anything. I don't know. Something felt off. The Sharpie namatag. The way he singled out Mark. It was weird. But the sun was shining, and the beer was cold, so I shook it off. We found 32B. It was perfect. Just like Phil said, it was at the end of a loop, tucked away, and you could hear the creek rushing just through the trees. We had it set up in 20 minutes. 2 tents, a big fire pit, and a cooler that was already open. The night was exactly what we wanted. We had music playing. We were grilling hot dogs. We were loud. We were obnoxious. We were 19. Around 9 p.m., just as it got truly dark, we heard a vehicle pull up. An official park a TV. A.W. crap, Tom mumbled, grabbing the music. It's the fun police. But it was Ranger Phil. He killed the engine and hopped off, hands on his hips, that same massive grin on his face. Well, he said. Looks like I was right. This is the party spot. Hey, Ranger Phil, Mark yelled, totally drunk. We're not being too loud, are we? Nah, you're good, Phil said, walking right into our campsite, into the light of our fire. Your closest neighbor is a good 100 yards away. You're fine. Just check in on my favorite campers. He stood there for a second, just watching us. You want a beer? Chris offered, holding one up. I shot Chris a look. You don't offer a ranger a beer. But Phil just laughed. I'm technically off duty in about 10 minutes. So, why not? He took the beer, popped the top, and sat down in our empty camp chair like he was the fifth member of the group. This was not normal. For the next hour, he just sat there. He told these stories. They all started funny, but they all ended dark. So the guy reaches into the cooler, and it's not a beer. It's a rattlesnake, he said, chuckling. Bit him right on the hand. Arm swelled up like a pool noodle. We had to airlift him out. He almost lost the arm. Wild, right? And he kept looking at Mark. Every story, his eyes would flick to Mark for the reaction. He'd clap him on the shoulder. You'd never do that, right, Mark? You're a smart guy. You're the leader. Mark, being Mark, was just eating it up, laughing along. I was getting really, really uneasy. The guy was a black hole of weird. Finally, around 10, he stood up and stretched. All right, boys, I gotta finish my rounds. But you guys are good. He crushed his beer can in one hand. You have a great night. Sleep tight. And he got on his TV and zipped off into the darkness. Dude is weird as hell, Tom said as soon as he was gone. I kinda liked him, Mark said, shrugging. He's cool. He's a creep, I muttered. The party died down after that. Phil had kinda killed the vibe. We cleaned up a bit, and by midnight, we were all heading to our tents. Me and Mark in one, Chris and Tom in the other. I woke up around 3 a.m. I had to pee. That's the worst part of camping and drinking beer. I fumbled for my shoes and my flashlight, unzipped the tent as quietly as I could, and stepped out. The fire was just glowing embers. The campground was dead silent, except for the rushing of the creek. I walked up the little path toward the bathroom block, which was lit by a single humming fluorescent light. I did my business and was walking back, my flashlight beam bouncing on the path. And I stopped. I saw him. It was Phil. He was just standing there, in the shadows between our campsite and the next one over. He wasn't on his TV. He wasn't doing rounds. He was just standing, partially hidden behind a massive redwood, just watching our tents. I froze. My blood turned to ice. He must have seen my light, because his head snapped in my direction. He didn't wave. He didn't call out. He just stared at me for a long, awful second. And then he turned and melted back into the total darkness between the trees. He didn't make a sound. I ran back to the tent, my heart trying to escape my chest. I dove inside, zipping it up so fast I almost broke it. Mark, I whispered, shaking him. Mark, wake up. What? He mumbled, half asleep. Sirong. That ranger Phil. He's out there. He's in the woods. He's watching us. Mark just groaned. Alex, man, you're drunk. Go to sleep. He's just a weirdo. Mark, I'm not drunk. I'm telling you, he was right there. It's fine, he mumbled, and he rolled over, pulling his sleeping bag over his head. It's fine. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, my eyes wide open, listening to the creek, convinced every sound was him, coming back. The next thing I knew, I was being woken up by the sun hitting the tent. My head was pounding. I sat up. Mark? The sleeping bag next to me was empty. I looked at my watch. 8:30 a.m. I figured he'd just gotten up to pee. I crawled out of the tent. Chris and Tom were still passed out in theirs. The camp was a mess. Beer cans, chip bags, Mark. I called out. Nothing, just the creek. I looked in his sleeping bag. It was unzipped, thrown aside. And I saw his phone. It was on the floor of the tent. My stomach dropped. Mark doesn't go anywhere without his phone. Mark, I yelled, louder this time. I walked over to the other tent and ripped the zipper open. Chris, Tom, wake up. Where's Mark? They grumbled, shielding their eyes. What? Isn't he with you? No, his phone is still here. And then I saw it, by the flap of our tent. His shoes. He was gone. No phone, no shoes. In the middle of the night, we panicked. We yelled his name. We ran up and down the campsite loop. We ran down to the creek, thinking maybe he'd fallen in. Nothing. We checked the bathrooms. Nothing. He was just gone. Okay, I said, my voice shaking. Okay, we go to the ranger station. We get Phil. He was on duty. He'll know what to do. We sprinted. We didn't even grab the Jeep. We just ran the whole half-mile back to the main entrance. We burst through the door of the ranger station. But it wasn't Phil at the counter. It was a woman. An older woman, maybe in her 50s. Her uniform was perfect, crisp, ironed. Her name tag was engraved, Ranger Davis. She looked up from her computer, her expression stern. Can I help you, gentlemen? You look like you're in a hurry. We need Ranger Phil, I panted. Our friend Mark, he's missing. From campsite 32B. Ranger Davis just stared at me. No emotion. I'm sorry. Who? Ranger Phil. The guy who was working last night. He checked us in. He came by our campsite. He said he was the head guy on our loop. Ranger Davis's expression didn't change, but her eyes got cold. Son, she said in this low, flat voice. There is no Ranger Phil who works at this park. There hasn't been in a long time. It's just me and Ranger Chun on duty this weekend. I couldn't breathe. What? No, that's impossible. He was here, in this office. He was wearing the uniform. He had a park, a TV. This station, she said, her voice slow and deliberate, was closed all day yesterday. We were all at a mandatory countywide wildfire training. The station was locked. No one was here. But, I stammered, looking around, frantic. His name tag. It was tape. He said he broke his... Wrangle Davis's face went white. She slowly reached under her desk and pressed a button I couldn't see. Her hand was shaking. A piece of tape? She whispered. Yeah, with Phil written on it. She looked at me, and I will never, ever forget the look in her eyes. It was pure, unfiltered horror. Philip was a seasonal employee, she said, her voice a whisper. About 10 years ago, he was unstable. He was fixated on a family that was camping here. A young boy. He was fired. He threatened to come back. We thought he'd moved to Oregon. My knees gave out. I had to grab the counter. He checked us in, I whispered. He knew our campsite. He asked if it was just the four of us. He sat at our fire. He kept looking at Mark. He kept calling him the leader. Ranger Davis was on her radio, her voice no longer calm. It was sharp, professional. Code 10, all units. We have a confirmed 415 abduction at campsite 32B. Suspect is Philip. He's active. He's in the park. I was just numb. I wasn't there. I was floating. My eyes drifted over to a corkboard on the wall. A park news board. It was covered in fire safety pamphlets and bear aware posters. And at the very, very bottom, half hidden by a flyer for a junior ranger program, was a faded, 10-year-old missing poster. It was for a teenage boy, about 14, brown hair, big smile. The poster read, "Have you seen Daniel?" And underneath, in small print, "Last seen in Redwood Creek State Park, campsite 29A, the family was. Allegedly befriended by a park employee who was not on duty. They found Mark. 3 days later, they found Philip's camp. It was an old, abandoned maintenance shed deep in a part of the park that had been closed for years. He had uniforms. He had stolen keys. He had a radio that he'd modified to listen to the park frequencies. He had trophies, wallets, driver's licenses, dozens of them, spanning 10 years. He'd been living out there, a ghost in the park, watching, waiting, and sometimes he'd put on his old uniform, and he'd go to work. He'd taken Mark because Mark looked like him. He looked like Daniel, the first boy he'd taken, the one on the poster. Chris and Tom, they transferred. I dropped out. I couldn't be around the people. I couldn't be in a dorm. I'm back in my hometown now. I have a job at a cubicle. It's safe, but I still see him. I see that grin, that big, fake, toothy grin. I hear his voice. "Just you four, then?" He wasn't asking. He was counting. He was shopping. And Mark was just what he wanted. Grief is a weird thing. It's not a constant sadness. It's an ambush. You'll be fine for weeks, months even. Then one day, you'll be driving, and a song will come on the radio, or you'll smell old motor oil, and suddenly you can't breathe. It had been a year since my dad died. A sudden heart attack, the doctor said. He was 58, gone, just like that. My dad was my best friend. He was this quiet, gentle, solid guy. My brother, Sam, and I were his whole world. And his world was the woods. Every summer, without fail, he'd pack us into his old beat-up truck, and we'd go to Whisper Lake. It was this remote, primitive campground in the deep of the national forest. Just 4 campsites, spread way apart, and a cold, clear lake. He taught us how to fish, how to build a one-match fire, how to be quiet and just listen. Now, a year after he was gone, I felt this desperate need to go back. Alone. Sam couldn't come work. My mom thought I was crazy. But I had to. I felt like if I went to our spot, to campsite number 4, I could feel him again. Say goodbye, maybe. So, I was in his garage, going through his old gear. The smell of mildew, canvas, and him. It was overwhelming. I found his old canvas tent, his Coleman stove, and then I found this old green metal ammo box. I opened it. It was full of cassette tapes. I smiled. My dad was stuck in 1978. He loved his tapes. I saw a Led Zeppelin 4, the Eagles' greatest hits. But there were others, tapes with his messy, all-caps handwriting on the labels. Lake Trip 98, Summer 99, Whisper 01. I figured they were just mixtapes he'd made for the trips. On a whim, I dug out his old, clunky, battery-powered Walkman from the same box. I grabbed Lake Trip 98 and threw it in my bag. For old time's sake. The drive up took 3 hours. It was hard. I kept glancing at the passenger seat, expecting to see him there, his hand resting on the gear shift, telling me to watch out for deer. I got to Whisper Lake, It was just as I remembered. Eerily quiet. Beautiful. The sign at the entrance was faded, half-rotted. I drove down the dirt loop. Spot number 1 was empty. Spot number 2, empty. Spot number 3, empty. And then spot number 4. Our spot. At the end of the loop, right on the water, shielded by these huge, old-growth cedars. I was completely, totally alone. I set up the tent, his old tent. The smell was hard, but good too. I got a fire going and sat in his old, torn camp chair. As the sun went down and the lake turned to glass, I just sat there and cried for a while. After, I felt lighter. I made some dinner. The silence was big, louder than any city. And then I remembered the tape. I dug out the Walkman and the late Trip 98 cassette. I popped it in, put on the cheap foam headphones, and pressed play. It wasn't music. A voice came through the hiss. My dad's voice. Okay, I think this thing is on. Day 1. Made it to whisper. God, it's beautiful. Chloe and Sam are already down at the water, trying to skip rocks. Chloe's 5. She's just throwing them. Bless her heart. Sam, he's 7. He's so serious about it. God, I love these kids. My hand flew to my mouth. I'd forgotten he did this. He used to make these little audio diaries. I sat there, by the fire, under the stars, and I listened. I listened to my dad. His voice right there in my ears. He talked about the fish he caught. He talked about Sam falling in the creek. He sang a little bit of a Creedence song, off-key. I was laughing and crying at the same time. It was magic. I listened to the whole tape. The trip ended, he signed off. I was buzzing. It was like he was right there with me. I went into my bag and got the other tapes. I had to hear more. I popped in Summer 99. Day 1. Back again. Whisper Lake. Sam's got a real fishing rod this time. He's determined to catch the big one. Chloe's found a frog. Life is good. I smiled. I remembered that frog. I let the tape play. It was more of the same. Sweet, simple family stuff. And then the tone changed. Day 2. Weird thing. There's someone in spot number 2. Just a guy. An older fella. He came over this morning while the kids were fishing. Didn't even say hello. He just walked up, holding 2 fish. Offered M to me. I said, "No thanks, man. We got hot dogs." But he just stood there for like a full minute, just staring at me with this smile. Finally, he just said, "Okay," and walked away. A shiver went down my spine. Later that day, the kids came back from the water. They said the man from spot number 2 was watching them. From the trees. Just watching. I told them to stay away from that side of the loop. I don't like this. Something's off about this guy. I think he said his name was Arthur. I suddenly felt very cold. I remembered this vaguely. A creepy man. My dad had told us not to talk to him. I always thought it was just a stranger danger lesson. I kept listening. My dad's voice was agitated. Day 3, Arthur. He came by again this morning. I was making coffee. He just walked out of the woods. Not from the road. From the woods. He was holding this little wooden bird. A carving. He tried to give it to Chloe. I stepped in. I grabbed it. I told him we don't want it. I told him to please leave us alone. He didn't get angry. He just got that smile again. And he looked at me. And he said, "That's okay. You'll be back. You all come back." That was the end of the tape. I ripped the headphones off. My heart was thudding. I looked around my campsite. The fire was low. The woods were a solid wall of black, and the silence was screaming at me. Spots number 1, number 2, and number 3 were empty. I'd checked. I was the only person here. I knew I was, but I was terrified. I got up, ran to my car, and locked the doors. I sat in the driver's seat, my breath fogging up the windows for what must have been an hour. "You're being stupid, Chloe," I told myself. It was 20 years ago. The guy's long gone. He was just a weird old hermit. "You're safe." Eventually, I forced myself to go back to the tent. I zipped it up tight. I put everything I could in my cooler, my backpack up against the zipper. I lay in my sleeping bag, fully clothed, my car keys clutched in my fist. I didn't sleep. The next morning, the sun came up and the fear felt stupid. It was just a bright, beautiful day. The birds were singing. The lake was sparkling. I was fine. I was angry at myself for letting a 20-year-old story ruin this. I was packing up. I decided I'd had enough. It was too much. I was just throwing gear into the back of my car. I picked up my backpack, and the other tapes fell out onto the ground. Whisper 01, and one I hadn't seen. It had fallen into the lining of my bag. It was a blank-looking tape. No J-card. Just a single word written on the cassette shell itself in my dad's shaky handwriting. Arthur. My blood stopped. I had to know. I had to. I got in my car. I locked the doors. I put the key in the ignition, ready to start it if I had to. And I put the tape in the Walkman. I pressed play. Sound of tape click. And hiss. A lot of hiss. And breathing. Just heavy, panicked breathing. Then my dad's voice. It wasn't his. It was a hissing whisper. "He's here. Oh my God, he's here. It's a year later. We're not at Whisper. We're at Blue Mountain. A different park. 100 miles away. He's here. He's in the next campsite. I just saw him. He just waved at me. Like he knew me. That smile. That same goddamn smile." My dad's voice was cracking. He was crying. "Chloe, Sam, if you ever find this, he's not just a weird old man. He's following us. He knew we'd be back. Not back to Whisper, just back to the woods. The sound of walking, very close to the microphone. My dad must have been hiding. Oh God, he's coming. He's walking to our camp. He's carrying, no, he's carrying fish. He's got fish again. There's a pause. The breathing stops. And then a new voice. A man's voice. It's old and gentle and calm. And it's right next to the microphone. "Hello, Mike. It's good to see you again. I saw you set up camp. I brought you some dinner. I brought you some fish." My dad's voice, a choked sob. "No, please stay away from." I dropped the Walkman. It shattered on the floor of the car. My dad's sudden heart attack. It happened a week after his last camping trip. His Blue Mountain trip. The one he went on alone. He didn't have a heart attack. He was murdered. That bastard. He poisoned my father. I was hyperventilating, choking. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I fumbled for the keys. I dropped them. They were on the floor. I was sobbing, scrambling to find them. I had to get out. I had to leave. I found the keys, jammed them in the ignition, started the car, and threw it in drive. As I looked up to peel out, I slammed on the brakes. There was a man, standing at the edge of my campsite, standing in the road. He was an old man, very thin, with a long gray beard. He was smiling, a gentle, friendly smile. He was holding a small, carved wooden bird in one hand. In the other, he was holding a piece of tinfoil, holding it out. He took a step closer to my car and tilted his head. My, he said. His voice was soft, gentle, and it was the voice from the tape. That's a classic tent, he said, nodding at my campsite. Haven't seen one of those in, oh, a long, long time. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. He walked right up to my driver's side window. He smiled. His eyes were bright and kind. You look just like your daddy, he said softly. He used to love this spot. I'm Arthur. I live just over in spot number 2. I guess you could say I'm the permanent neighbor. He tapped on my window. I was just cooking up some fish. I saw you packing. I thought you might like some. For the road. He held up the tinfoil. It was leaking grease. He knows. He knows I know. And I know I can't scream. There's no one here. There's no one for miles. He's just waiting for me to roll down the window. I don't know what to do. And that's all for tonight. Remember, the most terrifying monsters are the ones that look just like us. The ones who might even live right next door. If these stories serve as a good reminder to trust your instincts, then show your support and like and subscribe. Hitting that bell means you'll get a warning before the next nightmare begins. Sleep well, if you can.